On the night of the 11th of June 2026, as the opening match of that World Cup still echoed through the streets of Guadalajara and Mexico City and Los Angeles, two numbers were spoken into the world that cannot both be true at the same time, and together they tell you more about the state of football's commercial soul than any FIFA press release ever could. The first number came from the president of FIFA himself, a man who had spent the eve of the tournament defending his ticket pricing against a wave of supporter anger and insisting with total polished confidence that demand for this World Cup was unprecedented by a factor of 10 or more. Those were his exact words. Please take a moment to hit the like button on this video and make sure to subscribe to the channel because for you it is just 1 second of your time. But for us it makes a tremendous difference and helps us keep bringing you stories that matter. By a factor of 10 or more. Demand so overwhelming, so historic, so far beyond anything the competition had ever produced that the only honest way to describe it was to multiply it by 10. But then came the second number spoken not by a president, but by a television camera. That camera swept across the stands of the Estadio Akron in Guadalajara during the group stage match between South Korea and the Czech Republic, and what it showed was row after row after row of empty seats. Not just in the upper decks, but in the VIP areas where the sponsors and the dignitaries and the football royalty are supposed to sit. Whole sections painted in corporate colors with not a single human body in them. That image, that silent, unscripted number, a stadium less than 3/4 full in a tournament that was supposedly experiencing demand 10 times greater than anything in history. Those two numbers cannot live in the same universe. And yet here they were, existing together, contradicting each other, and daring you to ask which one is the lie. Let me be very clear about what is at stake here, because this is not just a story about empty chairs or expensive tickets or a FIFA president choosing his words carelessly. This is a story about the soul of the world's most beloved sport, and whether that soul has been sold to the highest bidder. The 2026 World Cup was supposed to be different. It was supposed to be the tournament that brought football to the masses across North America. A World Cup spread across 3 countries, 16 cities, and a mind-bending 104 matches. The biggest, most ambitious, most democratic World Cup ever conceived. But on that night in Guadalajara, as the cameras panned across those empty VIP seats, something felt wrong. Something felt hollow. And the man who runs world football had already given us the clue we needed to understand why. Because when a leader tells you that demand is 10 times higher than ever before, but the stadiums are not full, you are not witnessing a mystery. You are witnessing a pricing strategy. You are witnessing a business model. You are witnessing the careful, calculated decision to prioritize revenue over bodies, over atmosphere, over the very essence of what makes a World Cup a World Cup. Let me take you inside the numbers that FIFA does not want you to see. The official attendance figure for that South Korea versus Czech Republic match was announced as 44,985 people in a stadium with a capacity of 45,664. On paper, that is a near sellout, just 679 empty seats, a 98.5% fill rate. Any executive would celebrate that number. But your eyes do not lie to you. Your eyes saw block after block of empty blue and yellow plastic chairs. Your eyes saw the sun glinting off armrests that no elbow would touch that evening. Your eyes saw the disconnect between what the spreadsheet said and what reality was doing. So how can both be true? How can a stadium be 98% full while looking half empty? The answer is that FIFA has become a master of the attendance lie, a lie that every major sports organization tells, but that FIFA has perfected into an art form. They count tickets distributed, not bodies and seats. They count corporate giveaways that never get used. They count resale tickets that were bought by bots and never resold. They count the ghost of a fan who never showed up. And then they issue a press release that says near sellout and hope you do not look too closely at the screen. But the empty seats were not the only problem. They were never the real problem. The real problem was sitting behind those seats in the form of a price tag. Because FIFA had done something that year that made the football world gasp. They introduced dynamic pricing for World Cup tickets, the same surge pricing model that makes your Uber cost $70 during a rainstorm, the same algorithm that turns a concert ticket from $50 to $500 in the time it takes you to enter your credit card details. For the first time in the 96-year history of the World Cup, the price of a ticket could change in real time based on how many people wanted it. So those tickets that started at around $60 for the cheapest seats in the smallest stadiums quickly rose to $140 or higher as demand allegedly surged. And if you wanted to see the big teams, if you wanted to see the United States or England or Brazil or Argentina, you were looking at hundreds of dollars just to get in the door. But that was just the primary market. That was just the official face value from FIFA itself. The real horror show was happening on FIFA's own official resale platform, a place where the governing body had decided to allow ticket holders to resell their seats at whatever price the market would bear. And the market was bearing things that should make any football fan weep. A ticket for the group stage match between the United States and Paraguay was listed at approximately $2,735 for the cheapest available seat. Not a VIP box, not a padded seat with a meal, the cheapest ticket in the house. Nearly $3,000 to watch a group stage match in a sport where working-class fans built the entire culture. And for the final? For the World Cup final that would be played at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, a ticket was reportedly listed for $143,750. Let me write that number out so it can land properly on your brain. $143,750. For one seat, for one match, for 90 minutes of football. That is not a ticket. That is a down payment on a house. That is a year of college tuition. That is a surgical bill paid in full. And it was listed on FIFA's own platform. Now watch what happens when you combine those numbers. 10 times more demand than any previous World Cup. Tickets that cost 5 times more than the last tournament in Qatar. A resale market where a single seat for the final costs more than the average American makes in 3 months. Empty stadiums, empty VIP sections. 180,000 unsold tickets across the tournament, according to internal reports that leaked out of FIFA's own offices. 180,000 tickets that the algorithms could not move, even after all that dynamic pricing, even after all that hype. Do you see the contradiction now? Do you feel how those two numbers from the night of June 11th cannot both be true? Because if demand was truly unprecedented by a factor of 10 or more, there would not be 180,000 unsold tickets. There would not be empty VIP sections. There would not be camera shots that make the sport look small and sad and empty. What FIFA meant when they said unprecedented demand was not that fans were desperate to attend. What they meant was that the revenue targets were unprecedented. What they meant was that the price elasticity model predicted they could charge 10 times more than usual and still sell enough tickets to break every record in the book. But the model was wrong. The model forgot that football fans are not ATMs. The model forgot that when you price out the working class, when you turn the World Cup into a playground for the wealthy, the atmosphere dies first, then the television ratings, then the legacy, then the sport itself. The supporters groups understood this long before the first ball was kicked. They had been screaming it from the rooftops for months. The Football Supporters Association in England called the pricing strategy extortionate and said it was excluding ordinary fans from the greatest tournament on earth. The Independent Supporters Council in North America said FIFA had turned the World Cup into a luxury good and that the people who built the game would not be able to afford to watch it. They compared the prices directly to the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, where tickets for similar matches cost approximately 5 times less. 5 times less for a tournament that was held in a country with a much smaller economy and much less infrastructure for hosting massive events. Let me say that again. Qatar 2022, a tournament that was criticized for everything from human rights to weather to logistical nightmares, offered tickets at roughly 1/5 the price of the 2026 tournament. And that tournament did not have empty seats. That tournament did not need dynamic pricing algorithms to fill stadiums. That tournament had demand that was real, not manufactured, because the prices were set at a level where actual human beings with actual jobs and actual mortgages could actually afford to attend. But here is the deeper wound, the one that FIFA does not want you to examine too closely. FIFA is a non-profit organization. That is its legal status. That is the claim it makes to governments and tax authorities around the world. We are a non-profit, they say. We reinvest our revenue into the development of the game. We build stadiums in poor countries. We fund youth programs. We grow football. And yet here they were in the summer of 2026, earning more from ticket sales than any organization in the history of sport. The numbers were staggering, with ticket prices increased by a factor of 5 compared to Qatar, and with 104 matches instead of the usual 64. FIFA was projecting ticket revenue in excess of $3 billion for this single tournament. $3 billion from tickets alone, not including sponsorships, not including broadcasting rights, not including hospitality packages. Just tickets. And what do you do with $3 billion when you are a non-profit? Where does that money go? Does it go to build pitches in the villages of Senegal? Does it go to fund women's leagues in Papua New Guinea? Does it go to train referees in the mountains of Nepal? Or does it go into the pockets of executives and the travel budgets of council members and the construction of ever grander headquarters in Zurich? The answer is not a secret. It is written in every empty seat in every stadium where a family could have sat if the ticket had cost $50 instead of $500. And the problem was not just in Guadalajara, that was just the warning shot. Guadalajara was one of the smallest stadiums in the tournament, with one of the smallest markets and one of the most passionate football cultures on earth. Mexico loves football the way lungs love air. And yet even there, even in the heart of a football nation, even in a stadium that should have been bursting with noise and color and life, there were empty seats. So what happens when the tournament moves to the bigger venues? What happens when the United States plays in AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, which holds 80,000 people? What happens when Canada plays in BC Place in Vancouver, which holds 54,000? What happens when the semifinals and the final roll around and the cheapest tickets are measured in the thousands and the most expensive tickets are measured in the price of a luxury car? The concern that every journalist in that stadium felt that night was not about one match in one city. It was about the trajectory. It was about what happens when a governing body falls so deeply in love with revenue that it forgets to check if anyone is actually sitting in the seats. It was about the possibility that the 2026 World Cup might become known not for the football but for the empty chairs, not for the goals but for the greed, not for the memories made but for the fans priced out. The central question of this whole story is painfully simple. Does FIFA actually believe its own claims about overwhelming demand? Or have they reached a point where the press release is more important than the reality? Because on one side of the scale, you have the president of FIFA standing at a podium and telling the world that demand is unprecedented by a factor of 10 or more. And on the other side of the scale, you have a television camera, a piece of glass and wire that does not care about politics or revenue or executive bonuses. That camera just points at the truth. And the truth that night in Guadalajara was a stadium full of ghosts, rows of empty seats that should have been filled with screaming fans, VIP sections that looked like a corporate event after the open bar closed, an energy that felt more like a preseason friendly than a World Cup. That camera did not lie. Cameras do not lie. They just capture what is in front of them. And what was in front of them was a beautiful stadium, under a beautiful sky, with a beautiful game being played, and nobody there to watch it. You might wonder if there is any other evidence, any other clue that the emperor has no clothes. And the answer is yes, because the fans did not just notice the empty seats and the high prices. They noticed everything. They noticed that FIFA had introduced mandatory water breaks for all matches, even in cities where the temperature was mild and the humidity was low and the players were not struggling. Coaches complained, supporters laughed. It seemed like such a small thing, a 2-minute break in each half for players to drink water. But it felt like FIFA was following a script written for Qatar, where the heat was deadly. Why force water breaks in Seattle in June, where the average temperature is 68 degrees? Why interrupt the flow of matches that did not need interruption? Because FIFA had sold those water breaks to sponsors. Because every pause in play is an opportunity to show a logo. Because the commercial machine does not care about the rhythm of the game, only about the number of seconds it can fill with advertising. That is the level of detail that reveals the true priorities, not the big decisions, the ones everyone notices, the small decisions, the ones everyone forgets, the decision to price out a family, the decision to empty a stadium, the decision to take a water break that no one asked for because a sponsor paid for it. That is the state of football's commercial soul in the summer of 2026. And so we return to that night, the night of the 11th of June 2026, the night the World Cup opened, the night two numbers were spoken into the world that cannot both be true at the same time. The first number came from the president of FIFA, a man of power and confidence and carefully chosen words. Demand unprecedented by a factor of 10 or more. The second number came from a television camera, a silent witness that showed the world what a 98% full stadium actually looks like when the lights are bright and the game is on and the fans are not there. Those two numbers will live together for the rest of this tournament. They will sit in the same room and refuse to speak to each other. And every fan who watches from home, every journalist who files a story, every player who looks up into the stands and sees a row of empty corporate seats will have to decide which number they believe. The number spoken by the man who runs world football. Or the number shown by the camera that cannot lie. The choice tells you everything about who you are and what you value, but it also tells you something about the game itself. Football was never supposed to be a luxury. It was never supposed to be a product for the highest bidder. It was supposed to be the people's game, the sport you could play in the street with a rolled-up sock, the sport you could watch from the terraces for the price of a bus ticket, the sport